Hello! Welcome back sa ating Fundamentals of Accountancy, Business and Management class. Tayo na ay nasa Module 4, Types of Major Accounts. Ako pa rin ang inyong guro, Romualdo Fernandez Cred. So if you are ready, please prepare your pen and paper so that you can take down notes. So let's start. So before we proceed, let us know kung ano ang MELP ng today's lesson. Types of major accounts. The most essential learning competencies are as follows. Number 1. Discuss the 5 major accounts. And be able to prepare a chart of account. It has been an integral part of our discussion to have a brief review of our past lesson. And our past lesson is accounting equation. So I have prepared 6 questions for this review. So all you have to do is we have to determine the missing item. Number 1. In basic accounting equation, asset is equals to blank plus capital. So what is the missing item? Correct. The answer is liability. Number 2. In the expanded accounting equation, asset is equal to liability plus equity plus revenue minus blank. What is the missing item in the expanded accounting equation? Correct. The answer is expense. Number 3. Blank plus expense is equal to liability plus equity plus revenue. Determine the missing item. Very good. The answer is assets. Now, let's put some values in our accounting elements. Item number 4. If assets is equal to 150,000 pesos and equity is 75,000, how much is the liability? Correct. The answer is 75,000. Because if you're going to add the liability and equity, it must be equal to 150,000 pesos. So the answer is 75,000 pesos. Item number 5. If assets is unknown and liabilities is 30,000 and equity or capital is 75, how much is your asset? Correct. The answer is 105,000 pesos. So you just have to add the liability and capital or equity. So 30,000 plus 75,000 is 105,000. Last item for this review, number 6. If asset is 1 million and liability is 350,000, while equity and revenue amounts to 500,000 and 200,000 respectively, how much is your expenses? The correct answer is 50,000. So the expense should be 50,000. As mentioned in our previous lesson, asset should be equal to liability plus equity plus revenue minus expense. Since ang total ng liability, equity, at saka revenue is already 1,050,000, so you have to deduct an expense amounting to 50,000 para mag-equalize yung both sides at 1 million. So the answer is 50. So let's discuss our lesson for today, which is the types of major account. So every business transaction and events will be recorded using an account, which may be in the form of a piece of paper. And it can be classified into these 5 items, namely assets, liabilities, equity or capital, revenue, and expense. So yan yung classification natin ng account. So this is the simplest account or records used in accounting. It is called T account for obvious reason. Diba? Nakikita niyo ba yung letter T? So yung letter T, nahahati niya yung record into 2 sides, which is yung debit at saka yung credit side. So we will be illustrating itong T account kapag nandun na tayo sa ledger. So, if ituturo kung paano i-fill up yung T account. But for now, let's proceed muna sa ating types of account. Sa next topic natin, yung journal and ledger. Anyway, ang T account is dubbed as simplified ledger siya. So, it will be discussed sa lesson natin na books of account, wherein andun yung discussion natin ng journal at saka ledgers. So, let me repeat. We have 5 types of major accounts, namely assets, liabilities, equity or capital, income or revenue, and of course, yung expenses. So let's define yung 5 major types of account natin. So let's start with assets. Assets are the resources controlled that have resulted from past transaction and events and can provide future economic benefits. So I want you to take note of the following. Una, yung resources controlled. So dati, ang ginagamit sa definition ng asset is these are resources owned by the company. Sabi. Pero based sa current ruling, there are assets na kahit hindi ikaw ang naka-title, hindi ikaw ang may-ari, as long as you can control the property, then you can report it as asset na. So, hindi na lang ownership ang basihan ng pag-record ng assets. So, as long as you can control the property, kahit hindi sa'yo, kahit hindi nakapangalan sa'yo, pwede mo nang siyang i-report na asset. Hindi na lang title ang basis. Another is yung resulted from past transaction and events. So, ibig sabihin, yung assets, para magkaroon ka ng assets rather, dapat merong past events or past transaction. Ibig sabihin, may nangyari kung bakit nagkaroon ka ng property or ng asset. So, pwedeng binili mo, in-acquire mo yung property, bumili ka ng computer, so nagkaroon ka ng computer. Yun ay property mo na. So, meron kang assets. Pwede rin namang binigay sa'yo through donation or inheritance. May nagbigay sa'yo ng property, di nagkaroon ka ng assets. So, yun yung tinatawag nating past transaction and event kung kailan magkakaroon ka ng assets. Pwede mo rin namang utangin. Umutang ka ng property, kumuha ka ng property, hindi mo binayaran, nag-promise ka lang to pay or to give a sum, the sum at a future date. O yun. So, pwede ka rin magkaroon ng assets. So, yun yung mga sinasabing transaction. And yung last important part sa definition ng assets is yung it can provide future economic benefits. So, para mai-classify mo ang item as assets, dapat mayroong benefit na madiderive in the future. Ibig sabihin, kahit may property ka, kung wala namang benefit na nadiderive yung business, hindi mo na siya pwedeng i-record as assets. No? So, dapat mayroon pa ring economic benefit na makukuha dun sa business. Number 2, liability. Liability are current obligations of the firm arising from past events which are to be settled in the future. So, ang important points dyan is yung current obligation. So, it is current and valid obligation. So, hindi pa siya dapat nag-prescribe. Hindi pa siya nawalan ng visa kasi nga current obligation ng company para present siya as liability arising from past transaction and event. So, parang ganun din sa assets, ganun din yung concept niya. Mayroong nangyari kung bakit nagkaroon ka ng liability. So, ganun. Umutang ka ng pera. So, nagkaroon ka ng liability. Umutang ka ng goods. Umutang ka ng property. So, magkakaroon ka ng liability. Ganun. And, to be settled in the future. Siyempre naman, kapag liability, kailangan bayaran siya in the future kasi may term, di ba? Pwede mo siyang bayaran series or yung tinatawag nating installment o pwede namang one time lang siya bayaran. Number 3, equity or capital are the owner's claim in the business. It is the residual interest in the assets of the enterprise after deducting all the liabilities. So yan yung interest ng owner. Yan yung investment niya plus yung kinikita niya or minus kung magkano yung nalulugi sa kanya. Kaya yan yung tinatawag natin equity or capital. Yan yung para sa may-ari. So, ang computation ng equity or capital, para malaman mo yung equity or capital, you have to subtract daw yung the liability from the asset. So, yung difference ng asset sa liability, yun yung tinatawag nating equity or capital. Number 4, revenue income is the increase in economic benefits during the accounting period in the form of inflow of cash or other assets, or decreases in liability that result in increase in equity. Income includes revenue and gains. So, ano ang revenue? Ito daw yung mga increases in economic benefits. Ano yung economic benefits? Yan yung assets. So, ibig sabihin, pag nadagdagan yung assets mo, pag nadagdagan yung properties mo, mayroong income or mayroong revenue sa business. So, ano yung madadagdag sa properties or assets? Pwede siyang cash, pwedeng pera ang nadadagdag o kaya naman other assets. Or, pwede rin namang magkakaroon ka ng income kapag mayroong decrease sa liability. Pag nababawasan yung mga utang mo, syempre, lumalaki yung equity ng may-ari. So, nagkakaroon ng income. So, ang two types ng income natin, yan yung tinatawag nating revenue or yung main revenue account, and din yung gains, yung peripheral income. Last item, expenses are decreases in economic benefits during the accounting period. So, parang napansin nyo, opposite ng definition ng revenue kasi magkaiba naman talaga sila. Magkabaliktad talaga sila. In the form of outflow of assets or incidence of liabilities that resulted in decrease in equity. Resulted in decrease of equity. So, parang opposite ang definition ng expense sa revenue or income. So, kung increases sa revenue, sa income, ay sa expense, decreases. It is decreases in benefits in the accounting period. So, ibig sabihin, nababawasan yung assets mo. Kaya nga, kasi nga mayroong expense. So, paano nababawasan? In the form of cash flow. So, pwedeng pera o kaya naman nadadagdagan ang mga liabilities. Ibig sabihin, mayroon kang expense pag nababawasan yung lumalabas yung pera at saka binabawasan yung nadagdagan rather yung liabilities. And ang final effect niyan is of course sa equity. Magdi-decrease ang equity. Sa revenue naman, mag-i-increase kasi nga baliktad sila. Kung sa expense, nagdi-decrease ang equity. Sa revenue naman, pag may income, nadadagdagan ang equity. A chart of accounts. It is simply a listing of accounts used by companies in their financial record. So, yung in layman's term, ang chart of account ay listahan lang siya ng mga titles ng mga account titles na gagamitin sa recording ng business transaction. The chart of account helps to identify where the money is coming from and where it is going. So, parang gano'n, isa lang yan sa mga pwedeng gawin, show kapag mayroon kang record. So, ito yung mga titles na gagamitin natin sa recording. So, this early, sinasabi ko na sa inyo, kailangan nyong tandaan itong mga account titles kasi hindi kayo makapag-record kapag pag hindi nyo alam itong mga account titles. This is very important, no? So this is an example of a chart of accounts. So as you can see, naka-classify yung mga titles into assets, liabilities, capital, expense, and revenue. For example, sa assets, ano yung mga title na ginagamit nila sa recording? Cash, cash in bank, cash on hand, petty cash fund, accounts receivable, etc. etc. hanggang sa baba. So, yan yung complete list ng assets na gagamitin nila sa recording. So, dapat alam mo yan. And then, sa liability din naman, ganun din, accounts payable ang umpisa hanggang sa loans payable non-current. Sa expenses, ayan, ang mga titles na ginagamit na, marketing and administrative expenses hanggang sa miscellaneous expenses. Sa revenues naman, rental income, hanggang sa miscellaneous income. So, yan yung mga gagamitin nila sa recording. So, for example, yung i-record mo is assets. So, titingin ka lang dyan. Anong assets ang gagamiting title? For example, sa revenue. Anong revenue ang gagamiting title doon sa transaction? So, ganun lang. Listahan lang ng gagamiting account titles para may describe yung transaction. So, yan ang chart of accounts. So, let's discuss yung common account titles na ginagamit sa recording ng business transaction. So, let's start with the balance sheet accounts. So, syempre sa balance sheet accounts, mauuna yung assets. Anyway, ang balance sheet account is, ito yung tinatawag nating mga real accounts. Real accounts or permanent accounts kasi hindi sila close at the end of the accounting period. So, ito ay yung mga assets, liabilities, and equity. So, umpisa na natin sa assets. Cash. So, it includes money or its equivalent that is readily available for unrestricted use. So, ang example dyan ay cash on hand and in bank. So, pera. So, basta pera, cash yan. Diba? Siyempre. As long as it is, may requirement kasi doon sa definition. At as long as it is readily available and it is not unrestricted. It is unrestricted. So, kung kailangan mo, pwede mo naman gamitin. So, cash yun. Pero kung mayroon kang pera, for example, sa bangko, tapos it is restricted, hindi mo pwedeng i-withdraw, then hindi siya considered as cash. Saan siya ilalagay? Sa other non-current assets. Accounts receivable. Receivable supported by oral or informal promise to pay. So, for example, nag-render ka ng services. Tapos, hindi naman nagbayad yung client mo or may binenta ka, hindi naman nagbayad si customer. So, yun yung tinatawag nating receivable. Kasi, syempre, babayaran din niya yan sa future. So, yun yung tinatawag nating receivable. So, accounts receivable kapag walang promissory note, walang written promise to pay. So, meron lang siyang oral promise saka informal promise. So, hindi siya nagsulat ng promissory note. So, yun ang tinatawag nating accounts receivable. Allowance for bad debt. So, of course, di ba, may mga utang sa'yo yung iyong customer. So, it is accepted na hindi lahat yun, hindi 100% makukolect mo. Kaya mayroon tayong tinatawag na allowance for bad debts. Masamang pautang. So, ibig sabihin, ito yung mga receivable na hindi mo na makukolect. So, ito, allowance for bad debt is related sa accounts receivable. the aggregate amount of estimated losses from uncollectible accounts receivable. Yun nga. So, ito yung mga hindi mo na makukolektang accounts receivable. Other term for allowance for bad debt is allowance for doubtful accounts or allowance for uncollectible accounts. So, we are still on assets. So, let's continue yung discussion natin sa mga asset accounts. We also have notes receivable. So, ito ay similar sa accounts receivable in that nag-render ka ng services or nag-benta ka ng goods kaso hindi rin nagbayad yung customer or yung client. Ang pagkakaiba lang doon sa no accounts receivable, walang written promise. So dito mayroong written or formal promise to pay. Yung tinatawag nating promissory notes. So parehas silang sisingilin mo in the future, parehas silang nagsabi na magbabayad sila in the future. Ang kaso, ang kaibahan lang, ito, nagbigay siya ng may black and white. May written promise yung customer o yung client. Next, sa asset account, we also have inventory. Represents goods that are held for sale by the business. So, ito yung mga ibebenta na sa business. No? So, ang tawag natin sa mga goods na binibenta ay sa business ay inventory. Next is prepaid supplies or sa ibang books, tinatawag lang yan na supplies. Represents the cost of unused office supplies and other supplies. So, ito yung mga unconsumed na supplies such as paper clip, ball pen, mga consumable na ginagamit sa business, mga paste, fastener, mga ganon-ganon. So, as long as hindi pa sila nagagamit, papasok sila at maka-classify under prepaid supplies. Next, we have prepaid rent. Rent paid in advance. Ito yung renta na binayaran mo in advance. Hindi mo pa nagagamit, pero binayaran mo na. For example, today, January. Babayaran mo na yung February, bayaran mo na yung January, February, March. So, meron ka ng advance rental na 3 months. Kasi prepaid, kasi hindi pa naman natapos yung period. For example, sa January, hindi pa naman tapos ang January, February, at saka March. Kaya tinatawag natin silang kapag may mga renta na binayaran in advance, ang gagamitin mong title ay prepaid rent. Another prepaid item is yung insurance din. Pwede rin ka rin magkaroon ng prepaid insurance. Cost of insurance paid in advance. So, halos lahat naman ng expense na binayaran mo in advance, pwede siyang maging prepaid. Prepaid insurance. Ito yung insurance premium na binayaran mo in advance. So, for example, for 2021, binayaran mo na yung for the whole year, January to December. So, yun ay prepaid insurance kasi hindi pa naman tapos, di ba? Pag natapos na, saka tatanggalin sa prepaid insurance. Binayaran in advance. Tapos, hindi pa tapos. Yun yung concept ng prepaid. Let's continue with our discussion in assets. Land is simply the lot on which the building is situated. And then, dapat yan din sila nag-ooperate. Or even kung yung land ay vacant at walang kinonstruct na structure, pero alat na siya as site ng future plant nila. Basta dedicated na siya for as future plant site, nakaalat na siya. So, pwede nang i-record yung lot as land. Building. It is the structure owned by the business for its operation. So, yung structure, pwedeng concrete or hindi. Pwedeng high-rise o low-rise na siya. As long as ginagamit na yung structure sa business operation. Accumulated depreciation, the total amount of depreciation expense recognized. So, yung mga depreciable assets kasi, periodically, nababawasan yung value nila. Yun yung concept ng depreciation. Yung properties, nagdi-decline ang value due to wear and tear. For example, yung building, pag ginagamit na yung building, tapos napaglilipasan na siya ng panahon, so of course, nababawasan na yung value niya. Yun yung concept ng depreciation expense. However, itong accumulated depreciation, yung depreciation expense na nire-recognize doon ay iniipon niya. Kaya nga accumulated. Naiipon yung depreciation. So, ina-add mo lang siya. Ina-accumulate. Next is equipment. So, pwede siyang various item. Yung equipment, pwede siyang machineries, transportation equipment, office equipment, computer equipment, at saka furniture and fixtures. So, minsan, ginugroup na lang yung mga yan as equipment. Pero pwede namang gamitin din yung title niya, machineries, transportation equipment, office equipment, computer equipment, at saka furnitures and fixtures, especially kung masyadong maraming property and business. So, hindi pwedeng pag-isahin lang siya as equipment. So, mas maganda na i-classify din siya para malaman mo kung magkano yung magkano ang machinery, transportation equipment, at saka office equipment, etc. Now, let's move to liabilities. Ito yung ating second element na after ng asset. So, ang first sa ating liability is accounts payable. It is an obligation supported by oral or informal promise to pay. While yung notes payable naman, obligation supported by written or formal promise to pay by the debtor in the form of promissory note. So, parang ganyan din yung case ng accounts receivable. So, sa accounts receivable, ikaw yung nagbenta o kaya yung nag-render ng services. So, hindi ka binayaran. So, magkakaroon ka ng receivable. Ito naman sa payable, ikaw ang magbabayad na. Kasi nga, kumuha ka ng services or goods. Tapos, hindi mo binayaran. Ikaw naman ngayon ang magbabayad. Kaya nga, payable. So, for example, kumuha ka ng equipment, tapos hindi ka nagbayad, mayroon kang payable. Ang tanong dun is, anong payable? Account or notes payable? So, pag nagbigay ka ng promise to pay, meron kang promise to pay or promissory note na written, then it is notes payable. Pero pag wala kang binigay na promissory note, accounts payable lang siya. Interest payable, interest incurred but not yet paid. Interest payable arises from interest-bearing liabilities. For example, umutang ka ng pera, umutang ka ng merchandise, pero ang agreement nyo is yung utang mo mag-earn ng interest. So, ibig sabihin, magkakaroon ka ng interest payable. So, payable, ibig sabihin, hindi mo siya nabayaran. Hindi mo pa siya nabayaran kasi nga, kaya nga payable. Next, another is salaries payable. Salaries already earned by the employee but not yet paid to the employee. Oo, na-render na niya yung services pero hindi mo pa siya pinapasweldo. So, meron kang salary payable. Nagtrabaho na siya eh. So, ibig sabihin na ibigay na niya yung required services. So, dapat mag-record ka na ng expense. Kaya lang, hindi mo pa binayaran. So, ang i-record mo muna ay, kasi hindi mo pa binibigay yung pera, payable muna. Ibig sabihin, may utang ka dun sa employee. Mayroon kang salary payable. Next, utility payable. Electricity, water, telephone, internet, cable, TV, used but not yet paid. So, ganun din. Since may nagamit ka ng kuryente, may nagamit ka ng water sa telephone, sa internet, sa cable, pero hindi mo naman pa binayaran or hindi, hindi mo pa binayaran, correct? So, magkakaroon ka ngayon ng liability. No? So, itong mga ito ay group na sila as utility payable. Yung electricity, water, telephone, internet, cable, pwede na siyang lump sum as utility payable. Pero, sa iba, sinesegregate nila, no? For example, iba-iba, gumagawa sila ng ibang account. Hindi nila, ayaw nilang i-merge. So, pwede rin naman yan. For example, electricity, payable, water, payable, telephone, internet. Pwede namang hiwa-hiwalay. Or pwede nga silang i-group. Unearned income. So, these are income collected in advance before the services is rendered. So, ang unearned income is a liability. Hindi pa siya income kasi it is unearned. Hindi mo pa naibibigay yung kapalit. Hindi pa kompleto yung earnings process. Kaya liability siya. Please take note of that. Unearned income is a liability. Hindi siya revenue. So, these are income collected in advance before the services is rendered. So, nag-advance payment na si client o kaya si customer, pero ikaw o yung business, hindi pa na ibibigay yung goods or yung services. Kaya unearned income. Mortgage payable. So, it is a long-term debt. So, long-term debt daw siya. Ang maturity niya is more than 1 year of the business for which the entity has pledged certain assets as security to the creditor. So, mayroong collateral. So, yan ang mortgage payable. Pagkakaiba niya sa ibang liability, may collateral. As a security, parang assurance ng, minsan kasi ganun yung mga creditor, di ba? Hindi sila magpautang kung walang collateral. Parang assurance nila yun na mababayaran yung liability. Pag hindi ka nagbayad, sa kanila na yung property. Bonds payable. It is a contract between the issuer and the lender specifying the terms of prepayment and the interest to be charged. So, yan yung bonds payable. So, yung issuer ng bonds or yung lender ay siyang debtor. Kasi kailangan niya ng pera kaya siya mag-issue ng bonds. Tapos yung mga bibili, yung mag-a-avail ng kanyang i-issue bonds, sila yung magiging creditor. Sila yung magbibigay ng pera kapalit ng funds. So, bakit sila kukuha ng i-issue bonds ng company? Kasi nga, kikita sila ng interest. And sa agreement nila, nakalagay na doon kung magkano yung interest doon sa bonds at kung paano babayaran. Pwede siyang bayaran ng Lump sum, pwede naman ng installment. For example, yearly. Ganon. So, this is yung third accounting element na equity. So, under equity, ang ginagamit natin yung title is owner's capital at saka owner's drawing. What is owner's capital? It is the residual amount after deducting the liabilities from the asset. So, na-explain na natin kanina yan. Definition ng equity. So, sabi nga natin, yung equity ay capital ay parehas na. So, yung kung ano ay ibig sabihin ng residual amount, kung magkano yung natira sa assets after mong ibawas yung liability, yun yung capital ng asset. So, assets minus liability equals capital. Owner's drawing. The account is used to record the temporary withdrawals of the owner. So, minsan, ganun talaga, si owner mangangailangan ng money. So, syempre, pwede siyang kumuha doon sa business niya. Kaya nga lang, i-record yun as withdrawal. Kukunin niya o parang kukunin niya doon sa investment niya. Ibabawas doon sa investment niya yung drawing. So, ang effect ng drawings, mababawasan yung capital ng individual. So, let us now move sa income statement account or ito yung tinatawag nating nominal account o kaya yung temporary account. So, ang nasa income statement ay revenue at saka expense. Sa balance sheet, yung katatapos lang natin ay assets, liabilities, saka capital or equity. So, let's start sa revenue. Ano nga ba yung mga revenue accounts na pwedeng gamitin sa account title, sa recording ng business transaction? We have service fee or service income. So, kapag ang business ay service, nagre-render siya ng services sa mga customer niya, sa mga clients niya, nagre-render siya ng services. So, siya ay ang kanyang revenue rather ay service income. Sales, revenue earned from the sale of merchandise. Kapag ang nature ng business mo naman ay buying and selling, binibili mo, tapos binibenta mo, o kaya nagmamanufacture ka ng goods for sale or to be sold, di, ikaw, ang title na bagay sa'yo ay yung sales. Interest income, syempre, kapag mayroon kang pinautang. Revenue earned from the issuance of interest-bearing receivable. Okay, so nag-utang ka ng pera, so magkakaroon ka ng receivable, and yung receivable, based dun sa receivable na yun, nag-agree kayo na babayaran in the future. So, pwedeng dagdagan nyo yung agreement para makapag-impose ng interest, para kumita ka lalo. So, magkakaroon ng interest income. Gains. Yan. So, gains, income earned from sale of assets. So, pag binenta mo yung mga assets mo, kasi gusto mo nang palitan or simply hindi na magamit, ibibenta mo na for disposal, di tatawagin mo yung gains. Professional fee, ganun din kapag ang business ay nasa service, pero ang services na nire-render ay professional in nature, so ang tawag mo sa revenue account ay professional fee ang gagamitin mong revenue account rather. So, please take note, yung professional fee, maraming nalilito dyan, classify nila as expense kasi may fee. Pero hindi, it is a revenue account. So, credit siya. Rent income, kung mayroon kang properties na hindi ginagamit, so you allow others to use your property. Siyempre, may kapalit. Anong kapalit nun? Magbabayad siya ng rent. So, na yun naman ang bagay sa kanya pag may property siya pinaparent, i-record niya yun using yung title na rent income. Expenses. So, ito na yung last accounting element. Expenses. So, let us discuss kung ano naman yung mga expenses na title. Una, yung cost of goods sold. It is the value of inventory that has been sold during the accounting period. So, yan yung tinatawag nilang puhunan. Diba? Binili mo yung goods, tapos binenta mo. So, yung value ng binenta mong goods, yun yung tinatawag natin cost of goods sold. So, kailangan mong ibawas doon sa revenue. Cost of goods sold. Ito yung value ng goods na binenta mo. Magkano yung value niya. Siyempre, pag ibibenta mo yun, hindi mo ibibenta kung magkano pinambili mo. Siyempre, dadagdagan mo para ikaw ay kumita. So, para magkaroon ng difference. Freight out. It is the seller's cost of delivering goods to the customer. Yan. So, freight out is a selling expense. Pag binenta mo yung goods, tapos may pamasahe, ikaw magbabayad ng pamasahe ng goods na binenta para makarating sa customers, ang tawag doon ay freight out. Kasi palabas yung goods, kaya out. Meron din naman tayong freight in na ginagamit din. Ito naman ay pag bumili ka ng goods na ibibenta mo. Siyempre, baka may pamasahe na kailangang bayaran. So, freight in naman yun. Pero hindi siya expense. It is part ng computation ng cost of goods sold. Salary expense, the salary earned by the employees for the services rendered. Yun. So, yung mga trabahador, nag-render sila ng services, so siyempre kailangan may kapalit din. Bayaran mo sila sa kanilang effort. So, yung tawag mo doon ay salary expense. Nagre-render sila ng services para sa business, so they are entitled to a pay. Pasweldohin mo naman sila. Rent expense. So, it represents rental that have been used up during the accounting period. So, sabi natin kanina, yung prepaid rent, pag hindi pa nagamit, prepaid siya. No? Pero pag nagamit na, for example, binayaran mo yung isang buong taon from January to December 2021. So, yun ay prepaid pa. Pero what if nasa March na tayo ngayon? So, kung March na ngayon, January, February, March, o 3 taon na yung nagamit. So, ibig sabihin, expense na yun. Hindi na yun prepaid. So, kailangan i-record mo na yung 3 months as expense. Utility expense represents the cost that have been used during the accounting period. So, ganun din. Ito din yung mga nagamit mo na sa electricity, water, telephone, and telecommunication sa internet. So, sabi nga kanina, pwedeng i-group mo sila as utility. Gamitin mo yung utility account or pwede namang electricity expense, water expense, telephone expense, etc. Telephone and communication expense, etc. etc. Pwede naman hiwa-hiwalay yung mga item. Especially kung masyadong madami din. So, pwede siyang ihiwalay. Depende sa company. Budget expense, sabi nga natin kanina, yung mga pinapautang mo sa customer, sa client, you have to accept na hindi 100% ang collection rate. Mayroon at mayroon nang hindi makukolect doon. So, yun ang i-charge natin sa budget expense. Depreciation expense, na-discuss ko na kanina nung discuss natin yung accumulated depreciation, di ba? Yung assets, yung property, yung depreciable assets, yung building, yung transportation equipment, yung office equipment, yung furnitures and fixtures. As time goes by, syempre, yung value niya, hindi na kasing taas noong kagagawa lang yung or ka-acquire lang yung property kasi nga mayroon nang nag-lapse na time. Tapos na may natapos na period. So, ibig sabihin, due to wear and tear, dapat mababawasan na yung kanyang ang kanyang value. Kasi nga yung hindi na siya as good as new. For example, yung equipment na pwede mong mang-produce ng product, hindi na din gano'n kadami yung maproproduce niya katulad nung bago siya. Siyempre, pag bago pa siya, condition, bago lahat ng parts, etc., etc. Then, marami siyang, very productive siya. Pero as time goes by, siyempre, hindi na. So, yun yung tinatawag natin, yung binabawas natin sa value ng property, yun yung tinatawag natin depreciation expense. So, for example, bumili ka ng cellphone, di ba? Yung value niya, pagkabili mo ngayon, hindi na the same after 3 years, for example. Bakit? Kasi nagamit mo na yung cellphone. Na pag lumaan na yung parts niya, yung style niya. So, kailangan, para ma-foresee yun, dapat i-adjust mo yung value ng cellphone mo na. So, mababawasan na siya. Magkakaroon siya ng depreciation expense. Yun yung tinatawag nating babawas. Next, advertising expense. It represents the cost of promotional marketing activities during the periods. Ang purpose ng advertising expense is to sell. Para makabenta ka, di ba? Mag-advertise ka, introduce mo yung product mo para makita ng market. Insurance expense represents yung cost of insurance pertaining to the current accounting period. So, mayroong prepaid insurance tayo kanina, di ba? For example, yung kung 1 year ng 2021, binayaran mo na yung insurance ng building kasi gusto mo i-insure yung building. So, prepaid insurance pa yon. Yun yung sabi natin kanina. Pero, once na may nag-lapse na, magkakaroon na ng insurance expense. For example, natapos na yung month ng January. Yung 1 month dapat expense na dun sa insurance. Taxes and licenses. It represents cost of business and local taxes required by the government for the conduct of the business. So, pag nagkaroon ka ng business, syempre, hindi mawawala yung taxes and licenses. Ito yung mga permits and other items na kailangan mong bayaran kapag nag-process ka ng business papers. So, may mga babayaran kang taxes and licenses. Transportation and traveling expenses. So, ang title na ito ay ginagamit to record yung mga transportation costs na ini-incur ng mga employee ng business para i-represent yung company elsewhere. For example, di ba, may business meeting. So, kakain, mamamasahe, etc., etc. So, pwede mong i-recognize as transportation and traveling expenses. Anyway, ang purpose naman ng trip or ng travel is sa business. So, as long as i-approve ng company na you are on official business trip, then, yung mga expenses mo, pag nasunod niya yung guidelines ng company, syempre sa iba yun, pwede mo siyang i-record as transportation and traveling expenses. Interest expense. Syempre, pag may utang ka, syempre magbabayad ka ng interest. At yung binayaran mong interest, yun ay tinatawag natin interest expense. It is the cost incurred for borrowing money. Syempre, umutang ka. Halos karamihan ng utang ngayon, mayroong ini-impose na interest. So, yun ay interest expense. And then, miscellaneous expense represents various small expenditures which do not warrant separate presentation. So, ito yung mga maliit na expenses, mga petty expenses. So, pwede na lang natin silang i-recognize as miscellaneous expense rather than mag-create tayo ng special account item para sa kanila. Especially kung hindi naman siya repetitive at maliit lang yung amount. Miscellaneous, charge to miscellaneous expense. Okay, thank you very much. for watching. So if you have a question, please feel free to ask sa ating GC. Thank you very much. Ako pa rin si Romualdo Fredo, ang inyong guro. God bless.